So March Madness is a 3-week basketball tournament for Division I basketball that determines the national champion, right? Every year, you fill out your brackets.
It's a big time thing.
You watch the games. You have the buzzer beaters. You have the Final Fours. It's the whole deal, right? So the NCAA, right? The NCAA is the governing body for college athletics, right? So the NCAA, their main source of revenue is March Madness.
Yeah,
right?
And the March Madness, like you said, is almost a month of basketball games. 64 teams make it in. Obviously, there's over 30 plus games every weekend. The field gets dwindled down, but the money that is gross is
no, it's crazy. All right, so March Madness, 2017, in 3 weeks of March Madness, the NCAA made $1 billion. Right?
Yeah, for the first time. This is the first time that it's gone over $1 billion.
Record-breaking amount. That's how much revenue they made.
Yeah.
The American Gaming Association says the number of brackets will hit 70 million. That means 70 million people will play brackets, office pools, gambling, friends, bars, whatever, right? $9.2 billion is gambled on the tournament, right? So the NCAA makes $1 billion.
Yeah.
$9 billion is actually gambled on it. So that represents 90%. That $1 billion represents 90% of the NCAA's annual revenue.
Yeah, didn't Warren Buffett have a $1 billion contest?
Yeah, if you had the perfect bracket.
$1 billion is for the perfect bracket.
So in 2010, the NCAA signs a 14-year deal with CBS and Turner for $10 billion for March Madness, right?
Yeah.
So to cover the tournament, they have a TV deal for $10 billion. Then in 2016, they have an extension for 2032 for $8 more billion.
Yeah. So the first contract is supposed to run from 2010 to 2024. They see how lucrative it is. By 2016, they're like, all right, let's re-up. We're going to re-up now so that we can keep the rights to it. So CBS has a few channels and networks. Obviously, TNT is Turner Sports, and they have TBS. And I think True TV. Those are the 4 networks that cover.
Yeah, so
so you don't miss a game anymore.
Right.
We used to. It only was like it was only CBS when we used to watch it, and then they were like, no, we got to cover all these games. So now you can't miss a game. So
all right, so how the money is broken down is interesting, and it's very complex. So I'll try to make it as easy to understand as possible. 96% of that $1 billion goes to membership. Different colleges, right? They break it down. So each conference gets a piece. So they have $220 million pot from the NCAA tournament. Then they split it up amongst conferences. So each game that a team wins, their conference gets paid. Right? And then the further they go in the tournament, the more money the conference gets paid.
Right. So an example of a conference would be like the ACC or the Big East, Big 12, SEC. Those are our conferences. Pac-12.
Right. Exactly. So then from there, it's up to the conference to break it down to the individual teams. So it's a hierarchy system. The NCAA gets it, then they give it to the conferences, and then the conferences gives it to the teams. Right. So it's like a 3-tier system. So, but the problem is that when people say it's not as easy as just paying. So you look at it, you say, okay, this is making $1 billion. They have a $10 billion deal. How come the athletes aren't getting paid?
Right.
Well, only 1/3 of the teams are actually profitable.
Exactly.
Right. So 2/3 of the teams aren't actually profitable. So the 1/3 of the teams that are profitable, they are paying for the 2/3 of the teams that are not profitable. That's just basketball.
Right.
But the NCAA has a bunch of different sports.
Right.
And almost every single sport except for basketball is not profitable.
Right.
So now you have pretty much a handful of teams, right, in the grand scheme of things, that are funding every program.
Right. So it's like the kid who plays golf or the kid who plays lacrosse or baseball.
Field hockey.
Yeah, great.
And then there's a thing called Title IX.
Right.
So Title IX came in years ago, and that made it where you have to have an equal amount of women teams as men teams.
Right. Whatever sport you're offering, you have to offer to both sexes.
So now that cut the budget even more, and now the big revenue sport is paying for not just every male, but female sports as well.
Yeah.
So it's a very diluted system that they're using the top tier money earners to pay for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? So then it gets even more complex because that's the NCAA is basketball. Where the real money is made is football. So the NCAA 1 football department is different from the NCAA. So now we have to go into football.
Yes, football is a huge generator of money because, number one, it's simple math, right? If you have 80 to 100,000 people coming to watch one sporting event and paying $100 per ticket, you're going to gross way more than an arena that hosts 20,000 for basketball, right? The only thing is basketball has more games, but if a team has 8 home games and they sell out, which they do, like these big schools sell out every game, and they're getting 110,000 people to come in, it fails in comparison.
No, it's different. So, okay, we looked at Forbes' list for 2018 and the top 5 football teams.
Yeah.
Their revenue, right? So the top football team was, we'll start with number 5. Number 5 was Ohio State. Mm-hmm. They had a revenue of $120 million. And they had profit of $69 million.
Okay.
Then we go to Alabama, $127 million revenue and $59 million profit. Michigan is number 3, $127 million, $75 million profit. Texas Longhorns, number 2, $133 million with $87 million of profit. And the number 1 team, football team last year was Texas A&M with a revenue of $148 million with $107 million profit. This is just football.
Yeah. And Texas,
it has nothing to do with any other sport. It's just football.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's just generating money for the school as well, like you said. And the one thing we know about Texas is football is king, right? There's a reason why the Cowboys are the most profitable team in the NFL. So not only are they generating money, but we took a look at where the money is going. So when they argue, hey, athletes shouldn't be paid because they're going to school for free, well, here's the breakdown. So those numbers that you just ran off, right? So we can talk about how much is going to scholarships. So from that money that was generated from Ohio State, about $20 million of that goes to school scholarships for all the sports.
So they made $120 million,
right?
And $20 million went to scholarships.
Exactly.
That means that where the other 100 go?
We're going to get there in a sec. So number 4, you said Alabama, they spent $17 million in scholarships. Okay. Then number 3, Michigan, we have $25 million in scholarships. Number 2, Texas, they have $13 million in scholarships. And then number 1, Texas A&M, $10 million in scholarships. And the reason Texas A&M is number 1 this year is because a lot of people don't know, is like they have a large amount of boosters that donate money to the program. So that money just gets put into a pile of revenue because we're giving it to the university to help improve conditions. Number 1 thing they want is they want their football team to win. That's it. Like, that's what it comes down to. We want our football team to win. We'll pay money. We'll hire national championship coaches from other schools just so that we can win.
The Texas Longhorns has their own network.
Yeah, so that's crazy. Like, that is in itself. There are like,
not to cut you off, but the conversation of this is a conversation that literally can take an hour, right? Because, like I said, there's so many different levels involved with how much money is being generated. You have bowl games, you have TV contracts, you have the Big 12, like they have the Big 12 network. So Texas is in the Big 12 conference.
They're in the yes.
They're in the Big 12.
Yep.
The Big 12 has its own network.
Right.
But the Texas Longhorns have their own network.
They have their own complete, like, separate
of the Big 12.
And we get that here in New York. Like, before the Big East, before ACC, SEC had their own channel, Texas, the school, the University of Texas, had its own channel. And they still have their own channel. It shows you nothing but Texas and exclusive access. Really, what they want to see is football.
No, it's different.
Yeah, man.
It's different. And then can we just go, because we don't want to stay on this topic for too long, but it's so crazy, right? So we have to talk about the coaches, how much money they make.
Right. So the coaches are the guys who bring the recruits to the school, and they make money. They make money from their own contracts, and they get endorsements.
So how much did the top football coach make?
Nick Saban. So I mean, he's one of the greatest coaches of all time. $8.3 million last
University
year.
of Alabama.
Yeah, University.
Nick Saban made $8.3 million. How much did the top basketball coach make?
So Coach K made $9 million last year in salary.
Duke, that's the Duke coach. Ironically enough, we're talking about Zion.
Yeah, and a private school too. So
Duke, yes, private school, and the coach makes $9 million a year. All right, we won't even go through the list of coaches because that's crazy. Then we got endorsement deals. Mm-hmm. That's another avenue that they make money, right? Yeah. So the number 1 endorsement deal team is UCLA. Mm-hmm. They get $12 million from Under Armour, right? You have Louisville gets $10 million, Texas, They get $9 million.
Yep.
So now you have $10 million, $12 million, $9 million endorsement deals on top of TV, on top of merch. But you still got to go to one more category.
Yeah.
Stadiums.
Whew.
Right? So the largest, how many people do you think the largest football stadium, college football stadium holds?
I mean, I'm going to say 112,000?
109,000.
Oh, okay. I was
Michigan,
right
Ann Arbor. Michigan University, their football stadium holds 109,000. They sell out every game.
Every single game.
How much money do you think they're making off of that? They have 109. That's a town.
Yeah.
109,000 people fit in their football. That's more than NFL stadiums hold.
Yeah. There's plenty that don't hold 100.
It's an arena.
Yeah. And so, like, from that, so that money that they generate, those schools from the football, right? Some of those, there's an other category. So, yeah, the scholarships are one, the coaching and staffing is a budget, and then they have that other budget. So, on the others, that could be for facilities. So, they add wings to a stadium, or they add a new training facility at a university.
But you know what the best part about this whole situation is? NCAA is a nonprofit organization.
Tell us about that.
Plot twist. That's the craziest part. All of this money that's generated, the NCAA is a nonprofit organization. That's a different conversation.
Oh, man.
Now we have to go into a personal story.
You know what? I'm going to start the personal story because I remember, like, I was big on video games, and in the early 2000s, they had this game called March Madness. And at that same time, you were in school.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that conversation. I'm playing March Madness.
So prior to my career in business, I was a basketball player.
You dabbled in basketball.
Little known fact. I was a Division I basketball player, right? So I played D1 for 2 years. So, yes, the EA Sports.
Yes.
EA Sports, which is, if anybody's familiar with sports, EA Sports is video games. They
make Madden. They make... Well, NBA Live used to be a thing, not so much anymore, but Madden is their top game right now.
So EA Sports used to have video games for college football and college basketball.
Yep.
Division I college football and Division I college basketball. And they had every Division I school, and they had the player's likeness. They didn't have their name, but they had their likeness.
Right. They couldn't say your name, but they put your number and like your attributes. So if you were a good shooter, then your rating was like an 80 or above or something like that.
So what was that? Like 2000 and... When was I in college? I think 2006, something like that. I don't know. Around that time.
Yeah.
Mid-2000s. So, yes, when I was in college, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, which is D1 school.
Number 15?
I was number 15.
I remember I was using you in the game.
And, yeah, he was playing with me.
He was and
it was crazy because we was just happy, being in college. I never was a really good video game player. I wasn't into video games, but my friends were, my teammates were. So we would go and we would play video games, but it was just cool to see somebody that it was made in your likeness. Like it looked like me, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I'm like, that's kind of crazy. Like to have somebody in my likeness on a video game. We wasn't thinking that they was using us and we wasn't getting paid.
Yeah.
So, but somebody did, right? Ed O'Bannon. That's a different story.
Ed O'Bannon.
Shout out to Ed O'Bannon. Yeah. Shout out to Ed O'Bannon. So
people only know Ed O'Bannon for this, but this guy was like the national player of the year
in
basketball.
O'Bannon, if you don't know who Ed O'Bannon is, do your research.
Yeah, 1995 UCLA national champ, player of the year.
Legend.
But he's legend in that, but then he changes
the game. So he changes the game completely because he realizes that EA Sports, so we talked about all these other revenue sources, right? Video games, $1 billion industry. EA Sports making $1 million a year, and the colleges are getting paid off of that as well because they have to license their name to use them in the video games. Mm-hmm. So the colleges are getting paid millions and EA Sports are getting paid millions from video games, but the kids wasn't getting any money. So they have a class action lawsuit and they won.
Yeah.
So what happens is that anybody that played Division I sports, football or basketball, I think like from a 10-year period that was featured in that video game was part of that class action lawsuit. And lo and behold, I was part of that class action lawsuit.
Cut you a check.
So they cut me a check. So around probably 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I get a check for like $1,800.
Look at that.
Wasn't bad.
No, you take it.
But it just goes to show you that there's so many different ways how colleges are making money.
A lot.
Right?
A lot.
So I know there's an argument that students are getting scholarships and that's payment. And look, it is valuable because I was on a scholarship. I didn't have to pay for college. I appreciated my college experience. But we can't act like a nonprofit organization that makes $1 billion a year and schools that are making billions and millions of dollars off of 2 sports. We have to find a way to fairly compensate the players. Or if we're not going to compensate them, then we at least have to let them go into professional sports out of high school if they choose to, and not make them go to college. Like, you can't make somebody go to college and then not pay them.
Yeah, the only thing amateur about this is that they don't get paid. Right? They're saying, oh, it's amateur. It's really a farm system. Like, it's like the minor leagues, right? Because in football, you can't go.
It's a free trial.
Yeah, you can't go unless you do 3 years.
Right.
In NBA, and they're trying to change that now, you have to go for at least 1 year.
It's a free trial.
But in other sports, that doesn't hold true.
It doesn't hold true.
Yeah, so like if I wanted to play golf, I can do that as a teenager. Hockey, teenager. Baseball, teenager. Soccer, remember Freddie Adu?
I went to school with Freddie Adu. Highly suspicious.
You thought he wasn't 14?
I don't know. That's a different conversation. Highly suspicious that football and basketball are the only sports that require you to go to college.
Yeah.
Extremely suspicious.
And look at the population of the people who play those sports.
Extremely suspicious.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, hopefully we can change that in the near future.
Absolutely, man.